Welcome to episode 211 of Wealth Talk. My name's Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for Wealth Builders, joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Chris. Good to be with you again. This is the real me, not the AI me.
Yeah, I know. We're getting closer every week.
You cheeky person, you. Just listeners, what he did, we've been doing some AI experiments, not just with voice, but with video. And he cheekily captured my voice and put a note out to all our staff saying, I finally changed my mind. I've become a Sunderland supporter, much to the roaring delight of everybody around. And then, good job. Good job. It was tongue in cheek, sir. Good job.
No, I was hoping you'd see the funny side, and you did.
Of course I did.
Yeah, so we're really leveraging technology and systems and software, and it's really exciting. And we encourage everyone to who's in business to really kind of keep a good eye on what's happening out there at the moment, because this is one of the biggest changes I think that we'll see in our lifetime.
I think we're going to listen to an interview today with one of our members who's gone through a transition from doing things smaller to doing things much bigger, 10xing almost, I think he refers to it. And I think part of the issue that everybody can 10x, right? Everybody's got the power to go from where they are now to get a multiple return on where they are now. But you have to do it incrementally. You can't go from 0 to 10x. Like I say, when we're talking about the 7 pillars, Chris, you can't, if you imagine their gears in a car, you can't go from a standing start into 7th gear, because you'll mess up the engine, or another word that might mean that, but you really do things, some damage and some real serious noise and grating, and it'd stop you in your tracks and you wouldn't be able to carry on. But when you go through the process, through transitions, you're getting stronger, better, which is why we encourage people to make small decisions often, not big decisions. And I think the transformation that we see here in this story is a very powerful one, and very, very simple lessons that can be pulled out.
Absolutely. So, we're inviting back Andreas Loizou today, who's one of our members who joined us back in 2019. And he shared previously on episode 144 about his journey up until that point, but he's really accelerated since then. And today we're specifically going to dive into one of his deals that he's recently done. And I'll just mention before we go into that interview, Kevin, that we're holding our launch webinar on Tuesday, the 3rd of October. So for anyone listening now who's been enjoying the recent episodes where we've really been expanding to look at wealth for the whole family, not just the individual, then please do mark this date in your diary. We are so looking forward to announcing our Wealth Builders for Families membership offering and helping parents to become better money role models for their children.
And secure their oxygen mask before they help others.
Absolutely. So if you're interested in joining us, please head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/families launch and register your seat absolutely free. We're doing 2 sessions, one at lunchtime, one in the evening. That's Tuesday, 3rd of October. And we look forward to seeing you there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's head into our conversation now with Andreas Loizou, and we'll head back afterwards, Kevin, and do the usual debrief. Andreas, welcome back to Wealth Talk. How are you?
I'm good, Christian. Nice to be back again.
It is episode 144, quite some time ago, actually. And you were our member spotlight that week, and things have progressed very nicely for you since then. And today specifically, we're going to be taking a deep dive into one of your most recent deals, Andreas, and that was all around title splitting. So we're going to get into the numbers and things that perhaps you weren't aware of, which you certainly now are aware of, having spent the last 6 months or so getting this deal across the line. And it's a great deal, and it's really boosted you nicely in terms of recurring income. So we'll find out how that's moved you closer towards your next financial goal, Andreas. But let's just quickly summarize for those that perhaps didn't hear you on the previous episode. You joined Wealth Builders as one of our founder members back in 2019, and just take us back to that moment. What was in your head? What made you join?
Yeah, so it feels very long ago. It's been a few years, but I think it's just more having that network group around you. I think that was the missing part. The fact that I have a day job. I think being around like-minded individuals and sharing different experiences, like today, hearing others, how they've achieved their goals. And I think that's where it's, led me to where I am today. So I think that was the initial leap in terms of where I was and joining the members group. And I think the bit that mostly interested me was, having those monthly calls with the coaches, and that was a huge value over the years, just providing that support.
Yeah, we obviously base everything we do on education, support, connections. Had you done much education in business or property before you started?
Well, interesting that you say that, because I remember I studied business back in GCSE, and I wasn't good at it. I'm going to be very honest and frank. So I don't think business was one of my interesting topics back in the days. But I think over time, and the fact I'm working within the finance and banking industry, I think that's helped me understand in terms of how the engine works and how numbers work in general. But in terms of property education, the way I have found my feet is pretty much getting myself in the nitty-gritty part of the deal, and reading and listening to different podcasts and different individuals that have done what I'm looking to do, and just basically taking a lot of notes down, taking a lot of all the research that I've consumed, and then just going out and implementing it and learning as I go on. And I think the deal that I've done recently is probably a prime example, and we'll probably touch on it a bit later on.
Yeah, and I've seen you at work, shall I say, in the community by just asking questions, just leveraging, the experience, the knowledge of others around you. And as you say, just getting going and just learning as you go. And a lot of people go through that analysis paralysis and, shelf development. We've all heard the terms, right, where people learn and learn and learn and learn, but never actually take any action. And you've taken action, you've got some results. So let's hear about this deal then, Andreas. Set the scene for us.
Sure. So it's a little bit similar to how I've done title splitting in the past. So the deal in general was it's Eastside town. It's actually a grade 2 listed building. It's consisting of 6 flats, all within a freehold. So it didn't have your typical leasehold agreements in place. So the purchase itself was purchased as a single freehold with 6 units. And the other benefit of this particular deal was there was quite a bit of land at the back with 2 garages that happened to be rented out at it was rented by the nearby pub, so they were using it as a bit of parking. So there's a lot of benefit by doing it through this particular strategy. There's certain stamp duty tax benefits that you get relief on, as well as this particular deal itself, utilizing the SSAS. So my SSAS was, I'll say, recently approved, but the SSAS took quite a long, lengthy time to get the funds transferred, or as you say, get the fuel going within the pension. That was another obstacle and challenge for me. But once the funds were there, this particular opportunity provided that scope to implement that strategy. But again, taking what I've learned from my previous deal was just purely residential, similar block, six flats. But what we did with this particular deal was we not only divided the flats and created those 6 individual leases, but we also divided the lands into 2. So it had 2 separate titles where the SSAS could then be utilized and purchase the land at market value. And it's actually generating a good income from day one. So that's, in a nutshell, in terms of how the deal is structured. But if you want me to get into the nitty-gritty numbers as well.
Yeah, well, let me. I definitely do, but let me pause you at that moment, Andreas, and ask you the question that our listeners might be thinking right now: how did you find the deal? So, tell us about that.
Well, I think it was, I think as I've developed my knowledge and skill set within, I've been doing it for 3 years now. So I've been expanding. So I started at, just your typical single let house. And then I started becoming a bit more intrigued in terms of how much I can buy in one go. So I was looking at block purchases. So instead of having, if I were to buy 6 flats, I would need to pay someone 6 times, solicitor 6 times, a broker 6 times, 6 times the amount of chasing. So the way I found this particular deal was, a simple right move. So it wasn't an off-market deal. The property was there listed. And I was just looking at, number one, is it a freehold? And number two, how many units are in that freehold? And just doing, back of an envelope calculation of, okay, how much is a flat worth individually, and collectively, is the value higher than what they are selling the unit? So it's not, the initial analysis started from there, and then, it progressed into a bigger deal than what I've actually expected it to be with the SSAS. And even the purchase price itself was negotiated 3 times. It was renegotiated halfway through the conveyancing process. So I, was able to get the property at a cheaper price than what it was advertised. But I think for anyone who's listening is, just going on Rightmove, looking at, properties that are freehold and that have 6+ units, and just, working out what is the price of that unit individually, and then totaling up and taking it from there.
Yeah. And you talked about not having really invested in formal education, but of course education comes in lots of different forms of podcast, webinars, books. And if I remember correctly, your first title split, which you did back in 2021, and I think you told me that it was through listening to a podcast by Simon Zucci on title splitting that gave you the initial curiosity about this strategy.
Yeah, I think it's almost like a perfect timing scenario there, because I was listening to the podcast, and at that time I was, when I hear something, it's like, oh, when I get a bit interested, it's like, okay, let's go on Rightmove, let's have a look. So the previous deal that I got over the line back in 2021, that one was an off-market deal. The agent at that time said to me, it's out of your price scope. I think it's not for you. And then, once I looked at it, and I said, oh, actually, I can add value at day one by just doing this title split. But yeah, it all evolved from that particular podcast. The skill set, education, the first title split was an education for me in terms of the right people that I need around me to get the job done. Learned a lot around lease plans. There's certain legal documentation that you need to have prior to completion, which I learned previously. And then once I got this deal over the line, I knew exactly, almost like a bit of a checklist I had, what I need to do. But again, you always learn. And this one was another learning experience. So as the next deal comes along, I think I will know what I need to be looking out for.
Well, we teach the Wheel of Wealth, the process of turning a wheel on any strategy. And as you say there, you turn the wheel once, you've done a title split, and each turn of the wheel, it should get a little bit easier because you obviously have got experience, you've built up your team, and hopefully you can start to build more profit as well from the deals. And just going back to your wealth coach there, I know you've got lots of different support mechanisms around you, Andreas, but how important was it having that check-in? And let's give your coach or your coaches a bit of a name check as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think big shout out to Manish, because I'm pretty sure he at some point it was a bit of a me nagging, saying, what do I do in this scenario, or this number doesn't look right. I think it is crucial to have those calls, because it just gives you a second point of view. Because for me, I've been working on this particular deal since March, April time, and I only got it over the line last month. So as you always look at the number, you always see the number the same. But when someone else comes in reviews the deal with you in detail, say, okay, it was like an example, we sat together and we said, okay, let's go through the numbers in a bit more detail. Let's break it down by that individual flat. Let's look at the market value. Is it reasonable? Is it sensible? And to be honest, the amount of times I redid my recalculated my numbers, each time I was doing it, I was getting a different number and a different number, and then it came to a certain point that that number became a little bit more, concrete, and where I was more comfortable. So I think, huge shout out to Manish, but also a couple members within the Wealth Builders community as well, where I had a separate catch-ups as well individually, and they provided their honest feedback. So I think, again, going back to having the right group around you, I think that gives you that level of comfort and support that you need to get it over the line.
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of information that goes with this deal, and we won't be able to cover it all, Andreas, but certainly the highlights and the lessons I want to pull out as much as possible. So it took you around about 5 months then from finding the deal to actually buying it.
Yeah.
And can you highlight any key learnings? Were there any kind of highs and lows throughout that particular period, which you can share with our listeners that might help them?
It was like 4 seasons for me. I think there's so many highs and lows, and there's always obstacles. And I think, again, going back to finding the deal, never be settled with what the price has been listed on Rightmove. So using this particular example, it was listed at 975. I agreed at 905. And again, after renegotiating through the conveyancing process, I agreed at 870. Now, this particular property, without doing any refurbishments, pure paperwork, has been revalued at 1.2 million. And, that is market price. Even the housing market that is constantly changing and evolving, as well as the interest rates that are increasing. I think in terms of challenges, there's just so many to think of. This is the thing. So I think it was more, well, I guess the key one was I had a private investor that was geared up to bridge the deposit shortfall. So I was going to do my first JV partnership as well. Not only I was going to do my first SSAS, I was going to do my first JV partnership. That fell through 2 or 3 weeks before completion was due. So there's, trying to find other investors to come in at the deal, because it came to a point where I was thinking, okay, this is falling apart. But luckily, family came in, giving them a good return on their investment, their cash that they've provided. At the same time, I'm providing my knowledge and skill set in terms of how to structure this deal, so they can also implement the same structure that I've also accomplished. But also, given lenders have increased their requirements, every single time I was answering one question that the lender was asking, I was getting 2 other questions that were coming out. Last minute requirement for fire risk assessment that was, again, 2 weeks before completion. It was a lot of emotions, to say the least. And I guess, going back to lessons learned again in terms of SSAS, given it was my first time deploying the SSAS, and again, I had my coach and also provide Gary a bit of a shout out as well, because he's also provided a bit of guidance on that structure as well. Is also learning the conveyancing process from the SSAS side and incorporating it from the residential side. So there were huge amounts of learning, just thinking out loud, all these different ones. Even the valuation was expiring in 3 months. So I had to get the completion done before it expired, because they had the risk of being devalued because of the market change. So it was everything coming down to like a single date to get it all completed. But I guess, going back to the benefits out of this, one, I was able to get my SSAS invested, which at the moment it's getting 9% return on investment. stamp duty, land tax. I was able to save around £30,000 worth of stamp duty through multi-dwelling relief by doing the title splitting. Family members, they're getting a good return on their investment, and most importantly is that equity that's been produced on day one through the element of doing the title split. So I've probably thrown a lot out there, and
no, I want to dive into the SSAS a little bit more, and definitely, Gary Whelan there, Kevin's brother, being a great SSAS expert for our SSAS members. Again, you don't know what you don't know. 3-4 years ago, would you have considered that your pension at that point could be owning some land?
Do you know what? I still have a bit of disbelief, the fact that I was able to do that. Number one, I was able to move my corporate salary over to my director's pension. And second of all, be able to purchase, at the end of the day, it's land with 2 garages. But that land, there's scope for redevelopment. So again, there's a second phase to this project. But even when I discuss these things with my work colleagues, they're like, oh, I didn't know you can do that. And I'm like, yeah. Sometimes I'll say, oh, I'm just going to go and have a look at this land. I'm thinking about my pension, purchasing it as a way of diversifying my risk and try to have a bit of a different asset. I would not, 4 years ago, I'd never heard about a SSAS. Even if I did, I would have thought can't be done. At the beginning, I think someone was telling me it can't be done, but clearly proof is in the pudding. It can be done. It was definitely, an awakening and something that I'll look to expand as well. So that's definitely, yeah.
Well, it puts you in control and it gives you options. It opens up funding, so many benefits. And another aspect is, of course, now what you're going to do moving forward. So initially you found a deal, the plan was to buy, to split. What's the plan? Has the plan changed now?
It's constantly changing. No, I think in terms of concrete, in terms of being forward looking and, sticking to my plan and goal, originally the deal was structured to purchase, split and sell. That was the plan. At the moment we're looking, I'm keeping the 4, so I'm refinancing the 4 as we speak. The other 2 I'm looking to sell them on to get some of the equity out of the deal. We're looking to redevelop the land at the back, so that will create additional equity from all the figures I've given you. That's additional, I would say, icing on the cake of potential increase in equity in that particular area. But I think in terms of getting to security, I'm probably £50 short of security. So I'll try and find a way to squeeze another £50 somewhere. But I guess once I have the property fully tenanted and the land behind redeveloped, I think I'll be halfway, I'll be past security, halfway through to financial independence, which is for me a huge point in my journey. And this is, I'll say, this is not the end of my purchasing of these type of buildings. So I think I'm becoming more focused on these particular deals. It's the second time I've done it. I can see the benefit, and when I explain it to people who are interested in title splitting, they see it. I was a bit in disbelief when obviously you hear a podcast, you think, oh, that can't be done, similar to a SSAS, but it can be done. I think being persistent and never losing focus, I think for me, I'm also a bit stubborn, but I think the stubbornness also helps out in getting deals over the line, especially if I see something and I like something and I'm very determined to hit targets. So I guess, it's just, hitting that security number, which I'm almost, pretty much there, and then getting to that.
And how much is that security level for you, Andreas?
It's probably around 2,700. So this particular deal at the moment, So it's given me 150 pounds from the commercial, and 450 from the resi net, and that could increase to around, well, we're projecting around 1.5 to 2,000 nets. And again, I'll be going into a bit more of a holiday let strategy for this particular build. So that's a learning experience for me as I turn the other wheel. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of opportunity with this deal.
Yeah. So that's a massive boost to your monthly recurring income. And as you say, once you hit security and you've turned the wheel twice on a certain strategy, then the path from security to independence should be much more accelerated. And we see that very often. So you're very much on the right track. And you touched on it a little bit there as well, Andreas, about mindset, about kind of, I suppose, the emotion of actually what this means as well, because talk to us about, some of the relationship, perhaps even with family around money. And, we had a chat about, some occurrences this year, which, made you think about things, and perhaps you can share a bit about that.
Yeah, I think, it all goes back to your upbringing and what you've experienced when you were growing up. And I think for me, I've always questioned, why can I not have that? Or how do I achieve that? And I think that's, led me to, question the system and not being shy of numbers. Even this particular deal, when I first bought my first property, it was around 60,000-70,000 pounds. So this property is close to 1 million. When I discussed that with my family, it's, are you sure you're doing the right thing? Are you comfortable? Do you know what you're doing? Are you able to rent it out? Especially my grandparents as well. It's a different generational mindset. It's just, I think it's just being comfortable with the process. I think in terms of the numbers, as much as it probably sounds, it's an additional zero at the end of that number, but percentage-wise, and the structure is exactly the same. And it's just, but at the same time, you need to be cautious and mindful in terms of the risks that are involved in any deal that you do, making sure I think even the interest rates is a primary example. Even the housing market is where prices are going, interest rates are increasing. You need to always have some cash buffer to protect yourself. And I think it also links back to your foundation, making sure you've got insurance in place. I think the relevant life is another area that I've explored and listening into the SSAS podcasts. But yeah, I think in terms of family, it's they're not really used to dealing with numbers of this magnitude. And I think it's just, if you can make them comfortable, I think you're probably doing something right. But it's don't know if I've got a little bit off topic there.
No. Well, no, I remember when, we spoke a week or so back, and I like the way that you used the analogy of putting your oxygen mask on first, right? And you've got to get your own house in order to be able to help others.
Absolutely. I think that is, I always like using that way of explaining things. You need to put your own oxygen mask on before you can help others. It's the same when you sit on a plane. They always say, you need to have your oxygen mask before you help even the kid next to you. It's exactly the same thing. You need to have your house in order before you can help anyone else. Otherwise, you're just doing yourself, more harm, and potentially causing more friction within your inner self, or putting more pressure on yourself. And it's always been, my value to help. It runs within our tradition, family values to help where we can. But I think it's more important to help yourself get to a position where you are financially secure and capable, and all that information, all the things that I've learned, is passing that on to family and even generations further down the line. All of that. And I've been thinking around, you've got all the life covers in place. Actually, what does that mean to someone further down the line? You need to have clear instructions, because you're not going to be there, right? So you need to have clear instructions, clear values, and keep that momentum going even when you're not there. I think is more and more important. But yeah, the oxygen mask is a perfect way of explaining that. I really like that.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly putting your house in order, Andreas. You've got a firm foundation, you've got your roof in place, and you're building those pillars so that you will be generating not just one income stream, but multiple income streams. And, it gives you choice, right? So you said you're working full time at the moment. So you're fitting all of this around, a job as well. So for people that say, oh, I don't have enough time, would you say that's an excuse if you want it bad enough?
If you can always find the time, as much as I'm a morning person. My 1 hour in the morning is the time that I get most of my things done, most of my emails. I don't. You need to find time. If it means so much to you, you will find the time. If you're able to go to the gym, I'm pretty sure you can try and find even 10-15 minutes of your time in a day. And I think as you build your network, the time that you spend reduces as well, because you have others that are helping you out from a time management perspective. The fact that I've got a portfolio, apparently now I'm a professional landlord in the eyes of the lenders. That comes also in terms of making sure you have the team to manage the portfolio for you, because you don't want to be doing that full time, because that's not what you want. But I think I've also heard around people, when they hear what I've done and what I've accomplished and how much I'm building, and why don't you just, as you would probably say, quit the rat race? But for me, I love going into the office with a bigger smile every single day, knowing that 1 hour that I spent today in the morning to build my wealth is making me a lot more comfortable. And I hope someone from my work is actually will listen into this, because that's going to be a bit of an interesting conversation the following day. But yeah, I think it's just having security, especially with job cuts and the uncertainty of the economy. You need to have choice. You need to have options. And I remember my neighbor, who's probably 90 now, he's still, touch wood, still alive. I remember when I was around, must have been about 15, 16-year-old, just, playing in the garden. He always used to say to me, oh, Andreas, one piece of advice, have multiple streams of income. And that was years ago. And that has stuck in my mind. And and the fact that we have this program within the Wealth Builders community, and having those pillars in place and getting all the wheels turning, I think that is a primary example in terms of making sure you have multiple streams of income, because you never know when one will be impacted, but at least you have security from the other pillars that will counteract the uncertainty. So that's probably my age kicking in, and I'm not too old.
Well, you've learned well, Andreas, and you've implemented. That's the most important thing. And I'd like to congratulate you on achieving security, although £50 short. So perhaps we'll have to get you writing a book or something just to bump you up a little bit extra every month, Andreas. But well done. Amazing achievement. And I look forward to podcast interview number 3, when we'll be celebrating financial independence.
Can't wait.
Absolutely. Right. Thanks, Andreas.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Great stuff there. Congratulations to Andreas once again. Just love hearing those stories, Kevin, because we've seen the evolution, haven't we? That transition from when they joined, a little bit, I guess, unsure of where to begin, what steps to take. But if you follow the process, we know we've laid out the process in a roadmap, the recurring revenue roadmap. And if our members follow that, they will reach their targets.
Yes, it's a tried and tested process, and it works. Of course, it sounds simple to have a roadmap, and it's very simply laid out, but everybody follows it in their own unique style and way, because they go off in different directions. They've got different learning styles. They've got different ways they want to learn from people. For example, you heard Andreas say, well, my first ROI in regards to title split, ROI being you're on only one relationship, opportunity, or idea from a complete transformation in your wealth. So R being the relationship, O being the opportunity, and I being the idea. He had the idea, but he picked up the idea from a property professional, Simon Zucchi, who's a big friend of WealthBuilders, as we know, and then decided to use a sort of more of a DIY style of education, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think when you couple that starting point with a process, and you can hear, and what's always fascinating and rewarding for me, Chris, is when I hear members using the very, very language of WealthBuilders. You heard him talk about the 90-year-old guy saying, in days gone before, get multiple streams of income. Okay, didn't capture that in words, and we got Kiyosaki saying it, and then we say it with the 7 pillars, and he's using the 7 pillars. He's talking about turning the wheel, the process of education, support, connections, due diligence, community, all of those things. And because he's in a community and he's been there since the outset, then he's getting the value of that. And you can hear that because he also shouts out to his coaches. Manish Kataria, who's done a great job in the kind of overall wealth building, holding to that monthly cadence of a connection, discussing numbers, so you don't feel like you're on your own. Because sometimes when you talk to your family, as he said, it's £1 million, are you sure? Or you're not talking to people in work, right? Because you're not having that conversation with people in work. So you need a community. In my view, wealth is best built inside a community than DIY. But DIY can be a good place to start. And by the way, in addition to that, and okay, I'll do a shout out to my own brother, right? Fair enough. Gary Whelan, who's been working with me for many years, a very trusted guy in his own right, and doing great work as far as the SSAS is concerned. And we saw the power of bringing pension into play that he wouldn't have imagined that was possible. In fact, he even said he thought it was impossible. And people had said to him, oh, no, you can't do that. Oh, no, you can't do that. And I think the same thing, and we talked at the very start about using AI, people will get into that position with AI as well. They'll start to look and go, oh, no, it's too complicated. Oh, no, I can't use that, and become fearful of it rather than embracing it. But we can see that if you're surrounded by like-minded people in a positive and empowering environment, then you're going to be able to pick up the best lessons rather than hear somebody say, oh, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, and then you stop right in your tracks. So I'm so grateful he's using the right language. We've created the right environment, but he's participating full on inside the environment. And as a result, he's done some great work.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that is all reflected in the roadmap that we talked about, that first level of building confidence. And Andreas talked about getting the foundations in place and having the roof in place. That gives you that peace of mind, that security, to then move on to the second stage of building knowledge, which is deciding which is the right pillar for you, what strategy within that pillar, and then where is your leverage coming from. And once you've then worked that out with the help of your coach, with the help of others in the community, then stage 3 is building assets. And that's what takes time. And, Andreas has just consistently taken small steps, and he talked about time at the end there, 1 hour every morning. And I really loved when he said he walks into work with a smile on his face, knowing that he's done his wealth hour in the morning.
Yeah, that's very powerful. In fact, there's more leverage of time in there I want to pick up on, because it was quite a fascinating thought when he said, look, when we talk to people about building wealth, especially if someone is in a job or even in a business where the business is consuming them, the thing that people always tell us is they have a lack of time, and that lack of time can lead sometimes to a feeling of overwhelm. Now, how do you deal with a lack of time? Do one deal. That's the equivalent of 6 deals, which is what he said. How can I spend the same time and buy multiple units instead of one unit? And he didn't just save his time, he saved his money and legal fees. He's saved an incredible amount of waste that isn't needed. And in fact, even using a little known strategy of multiple dwelling relief. So if you buy 6 flats separately, you're going to pay stamp duty 6 times. You buy 6 flats in one go, you're paying stamp duty once on one flat, because the multiple dwelling relief basically averages the value of the flat. So say it's 250 for the sake of an argument, you're paying stamp duty on one flat. So you've got 5 flats stamp duty free, and your legal fees are not going to be 6 times as much because it's one freehold that you're buying. And so I think, some incredible easy lessons there for time poor people is try and find a strategy that leverages that time. And that's a very powerful lesson. And we've got partners. You didn't mention any of the partners specifically, although we mentioned Simon, and Simon is a partner. In other words, a trusted person with whom we resonate, who are outstanding in their field. That's what I would say as a partner. And we've surrounded ourselves with a veritable cornucopia of choice of partners, from people like Simon to Rachel Knight in titlesplit.com, as somebody we've had on before, who teaches these things very specifically. So there isn't a strategy that I've heard of that we don't have a partner who can help accelerate the learning. And you can get the learning in 3 ways anyway, so it's worth mentioning that, Chris. One is you can DIY it. You can read a book if that's your style. You can pay for some education, and obviously Wealth Builders negotiate discount for education with our partners. And thirdly, you could actually do a participation with somebody else. So you could watch somebody else or invest time or money with somebody else. Even your SSAS, you could lend and learn, and then you can watch the process. So you see the education and the process come to life, rather than just see the education, but then you get caught out by the process, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know in the process and you can miss something. So whatever way anybody wants to do, there's a pathway to follow that. And I think he's combined many of those things, but done a great job with his own leverage. And just think about all that value that was added. The SSAS came into play. He bought 6 units, negotiated the price, considerable discount in the end, and also got the land and the garages, on Rightmove. Yeah, there was no secret. You asked a great question, Chris. Before we get into it, how did you find it? Because the finding is the very starting point of wealth in property. We've talked about the 7 Fs before. I won't go into all of them, but certainly finding, number 1, then funding, then fixing, then filling, let's say, or flipping, if that's what you're going to do. But he did all of those things and found a way to accelerate all of them. So I think he's done a great job. And then you get a big boost, don't you, to your wealth plan. And in fact, in some cases, one deal can make you independent. One deal. Yes, it takes time. And you heard him say it took 6 months, 9 months, whatever period of time. It's a bit like giving birth to a baby, isn't it? That gestation period. Sometimes you have to do that. But we talk about planting seeds, whether it's investing in something, buying property, building a relationship with someone, joint venture partners. Another lesson came out of that, Chris. Had a joint venture partner pulled out. Just as you need multiple streams of income, you need multiple streams of partners. So building relationships with people so that if their circumstances change, you're suddenly not left in the lurch. with all of this invested time, energy, and money. Now, great, the family came to help, and that's brilliant, and therefore he's serving his family as well. But what if the family hadn't have done that? There's probably a salutary lesson in there for him, which is to build a network of people. Now he knows how to do this. His expertise is growing. And I think you jokingly said, write a book for the extra 50 quid. But what he could do is look back to podcast 74, where we talk about being irresistible to investors. So if you're a property person right now and you're building your story, like Andreas is building his story, then listen to that podcast and see if you can find a way that you can tell other people about your story. And as you grow, more people will follow you and more people might likely invest with you, including people with SSAS and so on. So, Chris, you did a great job today pulling a super case study with Andreas, which sounds simple, but so many lessons, though.
Well, that was exactly the conversation we had after the recording. It was about that next step of starting to build up your profile now. So yeah, it's as we say, it's something that we know works, and we love teaching and we love helping and we love sharing stories of the successes of our members. And we had Glyn Wilkinson just a couple of weeks ago sharing his story, who joined at a similar time. And we'll be sharing many more stories and family related stories on our webinar, which is coming up on the 3rd of October. So just another little reminder, if you haven't already registered for that, we'll be sharing those 7 family wealth principles, which we highlighted on last week's episode. So if you didn't hear those, please do head back to episode 210. I'll link to that in the show notes. And that's, the foundations for Wealth Builders for Families. And we'll be sharing all the details of what's involved in that and how you can become a founder member of this big new mission that we are on. And the date for that is 3rd of October, and the place to register, wealthbuilders.co.uk/families launch.
Chris, what about mentioning Spotify?
Yeah, so we had a couple of great sort of milestones this week. We broke through the 300,000 downloads. We just outside of the top 10 most listened to finance and business podcasts in the UK, above some really big names. So we were really happy to see that. And of course, we normally read out reviews from Trustpilot, but people are leaving reviews for us on iTunes because many people listen to the podcast on iTunes. And I'm going to head there right now and just read out one from GeForce, who says, Kevin, Christian and his team have built a knowledgeable, open and supportive team that genuinely want you to succeed in building wealth. I have been a member for 14 months and have benefited greatly from the knowledge shared in these podcasts, the coaching and the online learning. Thank you for your efforts and the community you have built. So that's on iTunes. But then on Spotify, we're also building up our star ratings. So if you're a Spotify listener, you're not able to actually write a review, but you are able to give us a star rating. So if you just search in the Spotify app for Wealth Talk, and then head to the top there where you'll see the information about the podcast, and you should see a little star, and you can just click that. And then if you'd care to give us a rating, that would really help us, because the more ratings we get, then the more the podcast will be shared to other people.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell if you've been a regular listener or we just listened to this one, the amount of hours have gone in to try and share this with you. And of course, that's free of charge. And we want to continue to provide value. This is 211, and we're going to carry on going. So give us 11 seconds of your time. Just go in. It'll take you no more than that. Just give us a review, whatever you think. And if you'd like to get to know us more, don't forget to reach out to us in any way that you care to, through the website or through sending a hello at wealthbuilders.co.uk, because we want to build the community, and other people like Andreas bring great lessons to us and share those lessons. And who knows, you one relationship opportunity or idea from a transformation in your wealth, and you could be an idea or a relationship for us, because you might know somebody who would really want to share the family's mission. And we know there are many, many groups of people who we think will jump on board with wanting to help parents be great money role models for their kids and young adults as well, because they're certainly not teaching this at school, and they're not going to anytime soon. So we're picking up the mantle, Chris, and looking forward to sharing that on the 3rd of October.
Absolutely. And there's no time like the present. So hit that share button right now and We'll be catching up with you same time, same place next week.
We will. Until then, Chris, see ya.